Welcome to Pain with a Purpose, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, redemption, and purpose. I'm your host, Chris Woods, and each week we will sit down with guests who have faced challenges with substance abuse, mental health, and recovery. But we're not just dwelling on the past. Instead, we'll explore what keeps them driven towards a purposeful life. Join us as we navigate the journey from pain to a purpose. Welcome back to Pain with a Purpose.
Hey.
Season 1, episode 11.
Woo.
And we have Cat Adduci. Did I say that correctly?
Yes. Adduci.
So Cat Adduci from Sober Savage Squad.
Yes.
And we're going to jump into a lot of other things that you've done in your life.
Yeah. Love it.
Sober Savage Squad. What is it?
Yeah. So Sober Savage was my idea when I first got sober. When I was contemplating getting sober, those times when you're like, oh, I might die. Maybe I should consider stopping drinking so much or just at all. But I put it off for so long because it did not, no offense, but it did not look fun. It looked like the most terrible thing.
Definitely been there.
Yeah. So I was putting it off for so long because I was like, okay, cool. Like when I stop drinking, like my fun stops. So I was like, I got to barrel through it. Like I was pushing through drinking alcoholically because I was like, I need to have as much fun as possible before my life ends.
Yeah.
And looking back, if there was one person or I even thought about being doing anything and not drinking that heavily or even just in general not drinking, my life would have been completely different. I don't know if my entire life would have been, but my alcoholic career would have been a lot different. So one of the first things I did when I got sober is I wrote down, my sponsor told me to do it. She told me to write down all the things I was going to miss about drinking. And honest to God, it was 4 pages front and back. I really loved drinking. It was very, very detailed.
Which is interesting because for a lot of people, right? And it's kind of a point to bring up is that we all love drinking and drugging for a good bit, but for a long time, even before I got sober, there was probably a couple of years before I actually enjoyed myself anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, no, it's not like anybody's doing it because it's the worst, you know, you keep doing it because it's fun and it starts out like that. So I wrote, 4 pages front and back of what I was going to miss, everything I was going to miss doing, things that I were, could do with my friends, places I was going to go, things I, wanted to see, people I wanted to hang out with, concerts, wineries, all this kind of stuff, bachelorette parties that I wasn't even invited to yet. It was so detailed and honest to God, it was about 4 or 5 things that had to do with actually consuming alcohol. Everything was the social aspect and the mental aspect of it. And I was just kind of looking at everything and I was like, why is Burning Man on this list? One, it was the pandemic. I wasn't going there.
Yeah. Nobody was going there.
No. Yeah. It was not occurring. But 2, why was I writing down entire events that I had no business even planning on going to in the near future, but also why would I not go there if I was not drinking? My mentality was so alcohol is a prerequisite of fun that I was so terrified to stop drinking. So the idea with Sober Savage was not so much of it's a program of what you do once you get sober. It's kind of to glamorize and I guess really put forth an image, not even an image, but really show no, it doesn't have to be, well, I can't drink. It can very much be I don't have to drink. So that for people, once they do get sober, you can go out and you can do those things. I can go to concerts, I can go to clubs. Burning Man has a sober camp. It's
really,
that culture is so heavy into recovery. And it's so that was my whole thing was if somebody told me you don't have to drink and go out and do those things, I would have stopped earlier when I, really contemplated getting sober and really wanted to, because I, it would have been okay. I don't want to say it wouldn't have negatively affected my life, but for me, before I started drinking alcoholically, if I thought that that was even an option, I don't know if I would have ended up drinking that much because, I knew the risks, like being around alcoholism, I completely was aware of everything. And it was not even a thought in my mind.
Yeah.
Like that, like, oh no, like it doesn't have to be like this like horrible negative thing. Like your life's not going to be over.
It definitely felt like that when I first got sober though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Because I remember sitting in like multiple rehabs and I was like, well, what about if this happens in my life? You're telling me I can't drink? What about at my wedding? I can't drink. What about when my kids get married? I didn't even have kids yet, but they were like, do you have kids? And I was like, no, no, not even close.
It's like, but I want to do a champagne toast at like my daughter's wedding that I don't have yet, and I'm not married or. Yeah.
So Sober Savage Squad, you touch a little bit about like why you did it, but like so like let's just say a lot of people know like Made in America, right?
Yeah.
So I think my main question would be like, what if you're not there, right? So like I know that you can't be in a million different places at one time,
right?
So mostly in Philly.
Yeah. So it is mostly in Philly, just because that's where I am.
Sure.
But a lot of the like a lot of the connections I made are from my my ties when I lived into San Diego. And that's because I was very, very into like the like house techno music, like the EDM, the rave or like festival life. And you would think that would be like a huge thing and a huge like contributor to the fact that I was drinking alcoholically and needed to get sober. But it really wasn't. There's actually like a very, very strong recovery friendly, like mental health, like knowledge and community with that culture and that whole community. So
yeah, there definitely is.
Yeah, there is.
Because I, through staying sober, I've been able to like make friends outside of recovery, which I was always like I was never going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And most recently, I don't know, 2 years ago, I went to Miami, had the opportunity to go to Miami, like went to that whole scene, right?
Yeah.
Went to a few raves. I would assume they were raves, but like it was like a day party at like, one of the whatever. And, my buddy like wasn't drinking, wasn't doing anything, but like isn't in recovery. And I was like, you're not doing anything? And he was like, no, I just, I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, I just really love raves. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. It really is interesting because it's assumed to be, it's assumed to be like the party.
No,
like,
I remember doing
scene.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you think that that's what's going on when in reality, it really isn't. I don't know because it's of it being like a little more liberal of a community, but there's like a lot, there's just like there's a lot more knowledge about mental health. And a lot of DJs and like music producers, you can't be, I don't want to say you can't be, but it's, I'm an alcoholic. I don't know how much longer I would have made it if I was like a DJ full time and like living in that like lifestyle. Like
you got to perform. You got to like literally do a job.
Yeah. Like if that was my everyday, like I don't know if I would have made it drinking. Like I would have. I mean, I would have like died or just really really failed. But so if you actually like sit back and look at the people who are music producers, DJs, not just in that culture, but even like comedians, like actors, actresses, like just like there's a lot of people, like most of them are sober.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they don't necessarily broadcast it because again, it's still considered like not cool, which is like kind of a bummer. And another reason why I'm all about like Sober Savage. Like, no, it's like the cool thing to do. But yeah, like that it really, because you can't be in that environment every day and doing like these like 10-day festivals and just like, ripping and rolling
at some point you're gonna drop.
Yeah, that's like dangerous. But so I don't know if it's because it's a little more liberal, if it's a little, I don't want to say advanced like with mental health, but it's just like more talked about, I guess. But yeah, that's a huge like recovery community in there. So like Burning Man has multiple like sober camps if you're in recovery or if you're a expecting mama and you like can't do that kind of stuff. Or if you are like, it's a whole bunch of stuff. Like if you're like California sober, there's like a whole bunch of different things, but there's something for everybody there.
Yeah.
If you go to like EDC or Coachella, you look for there's like totems that are all yellow and they're for people who are in recovery. So like if you're there,
I had no idea.
Yeah. So like if you're there and like you're either feeling overwhelmed or you're in a position where you realize that you might be putting your recovery at risk a little bit, if you're just like, I don't know, having a moment. Because like we all have moments, even sober or not, if you're just like, I'm having a a
So
time.
you just go to those. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can like, it's like people who are there and they're like consciously and purposely there together in a group, which is neat.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So has Sober Savage gone to Coachella yet?
So I personally went to Coachella.
Okay.
It was not while I was sober, but also it's really expensive to drink at Coachella.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't think that I was drinking at all really there.
Can't afford to.
Yeah. I think like there was one day I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to get a good buzz going. And it was like, get a wine. It was like wine this big with a, which is a cool concept, and then it had like a popsicle in it and it was like $18. And the line was so long and I was just like, oh my
Listen,
God.
I never went to Coachella, but I went to Made in America a few times.
Yeah.
Sober. And I could barely afford to stay hydrated.
Yeah, it's intense. It's
wild because they know they're going to get it.
Oh my God!
Because once the tanks run out, you're like, what are you going to do? And you're going to buy that water for $11.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. But I did have in Philly, because that's sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, cool. Because that's where we are. So Departed, they do. They're a group and they have they're more like house music because that's my lifeblood. Cut me open. I'm house music all the way. So they've been really, really awesome. And with everything they do, there's been a few times where, I've gone with a group of people and they literally let me in VIP style. It's like I bring people in with me. Yeah. And, it's just a few people, but then we're in our own little area. So everybody is safe and we're together. And I've met other sober people there. So they've been really great. So that's a huge thing. There's a lot of people who are just more cognizant of it now, I guess. And they're kind of realizing, because even if you don't have to be in recovery, if you're just kind of sober curious, or if you're just hey, I don't really want to drink tonight. And, I feel like that might be annoying for some people. So I want to hang out with other people, sober people.
So it's funny you bring it up because the sober curious thing, I had heard about it, but never really saw it. And I wouldn't even consider this situation like a sober curious thing, but I do have somebody that I know, her name's Teresa, shout out. T. Regan Photos or Photography. But Teresa reached out, right? Mm-hmm. And she was talking about how, nothing really was going on in her life, but she, started to not drink.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think she considers it sober curious, or maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. But regardless, the point is, she's able to, kind of put it down, but she also has noticed a lot of improvements in her life, her mental health, whatever the case may be. But I was talking to somebody about the sober curious community and some people being okay, I'm going to put it down, and then realizing that they actually have a problem.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's not as easy as they think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's, it's actually definitely a good resource to have.
100%. So with Sober Savage, one of the, cause I have a podcast, it's subscription only for now. I don't know if I'll make it public, debating. But the viewers and most of the followers I have are young,
really?
22 to 25 is the bulk, which I find interesting because that was definitely my goal is, more prevention instead of treatment. We have treatment, so when I first went in and I was doing meetings, I was a little on the younger side. I don't want to say I'm young because I'm not. Yeah. Well, maybe I am. But there was so many people who were I started to realize I had a problem around 25, 26 and everyone was slowing down and I wasn't. So then at, 41, I came into my first meeting and I'm like, what the hell is happening in between this time? What the fuck is going on that there's nothing. We're all just oh, this is okay. So my goal was prevention. So talking about no, when you go to kegs and stuff, one of the episodes I had 3 girls who did, shout out to the blackout triplets, they called them at Temple. They did Greek week, pledging. They did Greek week, sober, and they recorded it. Yeah. Yes. But so, and they were known as the blackout triplets. They were party hardy, love it. But the one is so she I'm not sure the specific dates, so I'm not going to blast that out there.
I'm horrible with dates, yep.
Yeah. So when I last spoke to her, she had hit her 90 days because she couldn't.
Love that.
Yeah, because she and they're all still friends. They go so hard, and she's no, she's right there. She's up on the bars with everybody, and she's just no. I'm more of a savage because I'm sober up there. But because she had no idea that was even a thing. Oh, maybe if I learn about, the fact that I might have an addictive personality, maybe, in high school and in college, and a little before I should like try to not drink for 30 days, kind of take your temperature with it. And then some people discover like, oh my God, I had no idea I couldn't stop.
It's definitely an interesting point, right?
Yeah.
Because as far as prevention's concerned, right? Like,
yeah,
who knows? If I could have stopped me years before it got like really, really bad, before there was no turning back.
Yes.
I've done a good job now of like not thinking too much about it.
Yeah.
But like what could I have been?
Yeah.
But it's like
an A24 horror film. You're just thinking like, oh man, if I could change the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is crazy. And that's actually too, so with the prevention part, like I don't know why this isn't talked about when we're younger, because if you think about like school and sex ed, like
they had DARE.
Yes, they did.
I definitely remember DARE.
Yeah, but DARE was like,
and I did a lot. I'm not proud of it, but did a lot of hard drugs.
Okay.
Never did anything that they were talking about in DARE. You know?
Yeah.
Like with the crack rocks and the weed.
Yeah, I don't.
Never did it.
Yeah.
Never, and so whatever.
Yeah.
That's my ADD going off, but.
No. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also too, like if that DARE was such a isolated program and it didn't have any longevity.
Yeah.
It was a program. So it was like you did it and then you were done. But
that is true.
Yeah.
It was like one time, that was it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think about like if you actually like sit down and look at the statistics for like prevention versus treatment of things in like throughout history of, education and, adolescent youth, for like sex ed, we have the stats that just like teaching abstinence for things like teen pregnancy.
Yeah.
Their stats like that support and do not support that. And they teach in health classes like, okay, like here's prevention for STDs, like here's this and this and this. And like it doesn't really make sense that we are not doing that for things like drugs and alcohol, because it really is just black and white. Like some people are born with like an addictive personality. Like I'm so strongly, I'm such a believer in the fact that like people are probably very, very much born alcoholics, meaning like they have addictive personalities and just so happen to not really ever get drunk and like cross that point.
I've talked to many people about it where it's like, what if you just never did the drug that you were addicted to?
Yeah.
Right? Because I can look at it from the flip side and it's like, if I never did opiates, right?
Yeah.
Would my life have turned out the way that it currently is? Right? Would I be considered normal and just be like smoking pot and drinking on the weekends? Or is it just because like I was dealt a bad hand, right?
Yeah.
That I just tried Percocet early on and like ruined my life. And it's like, I choose not to believe that today, but it's like, what if?
Yeah.
Right.
And it also too is like the what if thing is more so like it might not even have to do with the like whatever your drug of choice is, but I feel like it has a lot to do with knowing that about your personality. Like we are in a current state where if you're coughing, you're just like, oh, like you might have something up with your lungs. You should go to the doctor. And I think we're just in like the infancy years of kind of getting to a point where it's like, oh, like what, like, oh, you're sad. Like, what about that? Oh, like something might be up. You should go to the doctor. And like, that really is the case. Like your brain is very, very much just another organ. Yeah. I'm hoping that we get to that point where we get to like learn about like, oh no, I can't have more than 4 beers. Cause addictive personality. And it's like, what if I just knew that early on? Like I don't think it more so has to do with what the specific drug is, but the self-awareness of who we are as people and our personalities and like how we're born. Like I'm such a believer in that. And I'm a believer in that mostly because of I doing Eagles. So I only,
That's what I was about to, I was going to say. So early on, I was going to say, what did that look like?
Yeah. So I did not drink alcoholically for more than a year and a half. And I did not start drinking alcoholically until I was like 27, 28. And this is when I stopped doing Eagles. So I get asked this all the time, like, oh, like you were, NFL cheerleading. Like, what did that have to do with the culture? What did that have to do with you, becoming an alcoholic and like partying and stuff like that? And I think it's the opposite, to the point where it was like almost too good of a solution, because back to what I was saying, I very much think that some people are born alcoholics and just never get drunk. Like my schedule was so strict. And I was on such I obviously had to be like extremely physically fit, mentally, there with it, was it was a big responsibility.
Yeah.
And it was for 6 years. So like so I never had time to go out and do
So wait, what years were you there?
So I was there 2011 to 2017.
Yeah, we were there for some good teams.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
That's pretty legit.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was. Yeah. But and also too, like you think about even though we were not in the playoffs every year, some rough times. But still, you're doing appearances and, you're still a cheerleader and representing the organization who does so much for the city. It's like crazy. It's amazing. Like you're still doing that until after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So my season, like that's the season would end in February and tryouts started in March. So it was such a small, getting excited. The Italian in me, I'm like about to knock stuff over. So like the cheerleader season was from March to February every year. So it was not a lot of time that people had. And I think that has a lot to do with pro sports and why, like, I think it has people assume and it has I don't know. Yeah, people assume it has this like party culture and it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm sure you went to like crazy parties and like, you hear about like stuff happening. It's nuts. And I kind of think it's like that because if I never went out and did anything. But when I did, it was like 2-3 times a year, but it was like hard because I was like, okay, cool. Like I can never go out and do anything. So now I'm going to like
clear my schedule.
Hard. Yeah.
Clear my schedule for the next week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So especially with like professional sports in general, their schedule's so strict that, like when they do go out and like you hear about these things and these crazy parties, those are those 2 or 3 times where they can go do things. And it's very different when you first start to and have to reel yourself in from those kind of situations. And it's not because of something really big. So like when I all of a sudden didn't have like Super Bowl appearances to get ready for, it was very different because it was like, oh, well, I don't have to, like, what's stopping me from going out for, Taco Tuesday and having like 5 margaritas. Yeah. Like I didn't have that structure anymore. You know what I mean?
That's tough. I mean, because the more I think about it, right? Like, and I can't think of any pro ball players off the top of my head, but like you're like, so-and-so's in the news again. It's like, it's been 2 times. Yeah. And he probably went out 3 times this year.
Yeah, it really is.
2 of the times there was probably someone around, who knows, right? It's actually a really interesting point.
Yeah. Like I think it's like almost too good of like when I say like Eagle saved my life, I mean that it very, very literally because if I I have an addictive personality. This is obviously, I was at risk for all of these things, but that it kept me structured and it kept me like safe. And to the point where if I did have a little bit of free time, it was always like, yeah, but it's 2 days of free time. And then you have practice Tuesday. It was so structured. Like everything I did, I was accountable for absolutely everything I did. And so I was working full time. So you have to either be in school or working full time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's like, you have this whole life and then you have this like other life, which is technically part-time. So
that's a lot. Okay.
Yeah. It's technically part-time, but it's like full-time commitment. And then like, you're just, you're accountable for every little thing that you do. Yeah. You're living in that kind of fishbowl. So I feel like the millennial thing where we're learning about, with social media, everybody can kind of see what you do. It's like that, but times like a million.
So I think it brings up like, I don't know what pops into my head when you're talking about like everything being so structured, right? And I can't imagine, like I know the stress that I'm under for my day job, right? Yeah. So like the stress that you were under for what you're saying was like your part-time job and like your teammates essentially, right? Your fellow cheerleaders. Like, what about the mental health of like the girls that were around you at that time? Was everybody good, or was nobody talking about it, or was everybody mostly on the same page?
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't speak about like every team because every organization's individual. But I mean, from where I was, so Barbara Zahn and Susie Zucker, it's the manager and then the choreographer of everything. They're both like powerhouse women. So they've like got it together. But so they both specifically were always like kind of doing, I don't want to say doing check-ins, but it wasn't weird for someone to say like, oh, I'm really stressed out and have it be like, oh, okay, well, what's up? Like it was kind of a part of the culture.
Well, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know I mean, I can't speak to other teams.
Sure.
I hope to God that's how it is.
I mean,
yeah.
The answer that you said was like a breath of fresh air. Cause I just imagine, right? Because like it's an NFL cheerleading team.
Yeah.
That it's like somewhat cutthroat, right? And it's like, hey, if you're having a bad day, suck it up because we need you out there and like you better have a smile on your face.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
it might be like that. But at the end of the day, like if they're checking on you and making sure that you're okay, like that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was, so for that, it's, and again, I can only speak to like the Philadelphia Eagles as an organization, but so it's a nonprofit organization and they do so much for Philadelphia. But then it's also professional sports where it's, like professional sports, the NFL.
Yeah, we have to win.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think it's such a balance because for the Eagles specifically, so much of what we did, like, yeah, there was the games and, all the sports aspect of it, but they did so like the philanthropic part of what we did for it. Like they like the Eagles iMobile, they like give classes to students and like the autism stuff.
They definitely do a ton.
I can't. Yeah. It's like, it's remarkable, like everything that they do. But then also on the flip side of it, from a business aspect, it's performative, but then it's all like you do marketing, but then you also are this, kind of like accessible celebrity for the, like, because, we're out there a lot more than obviously, the players are doing their own thing, obviously, but we're doing appearances and things like that. So you can have normal and general conversations with people. So I think it was that like humanity part that like really played a part, especially with like the Eagles, because it's performative. So like, yeah, you have to be out there, you have to smile, you're tired, suck it up. Like it's the game, like we have to get everybody ready, but also at the same time,
it's
like
Sunday, we're going to need you to put your game face on.
Yeah, exactly. So like it was that, like it was performative, but at the same time, it's like, like we were very treated like, because we were part-time marketing employees, which is good. I don't know if, and I like, unfortunately, don't think every team is like that. I hope they are.
Yeah.
Who knows? But we were. So I think it was like, I learned a lot about discipline and, being able to be vulnerable and like say when I needed to stop and do things, which probably played a lot more into, me saying like, because I did only drink alcoholically, like, craziness. Like after I stopped, it was only a year and a half, which I probably owe a lot to that, respect of being able to ask for help. Yeah. Because I probably would not have.
Well, listen, that's awesome. I mean, shout out Philadelphia Eagles, right? Because I mean, sounds like they're doing it pretty well, or at least like taking care of their employees.
Yeah. And I think for college sports too, and like pro sports, if you think about it, there's probably a lot that goes on after people stop because they aren't used to having to have structure. Like they're not self-implementing structure. Yeah. Like if you're doing stuff every day,
you hear about it all the time.
Yeah. It's like when you graduate and you're like, D1, all this, you're awesome. And then like you graduate and it's just like, you don't.
How about, did you see the news with the NCAA?
No.
So NCAA for D1 collegiate athletes are now able to smoke marijuana. Oh, okay. So anybody that is formerly like paying any types of fines or anything like that for any type of like cannabis related issue is now lifted. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about like Cali Sober, right? Now, like, I'm not here to tell, say, I know what my recovery looks like, but like, who knows what's right, what's wrong, what's indifferent. It doesn't matter. Yeah. As long as your life is improving by all means. But I think it was definitely interesting, right? Because again, if I would have caught it early enough, I used to tell myself I was going to the league somewhere, right? Yeah. And I'm not that good. I was never that good. But
I was going to be Victoria's Secret model. How funny.
But the truth of the matter is that like how many kids probably didn't go D1 because they couldn't stop smoking weed, or didn't want to stop smoking weed. And like I knew a few from my high school that were just like, I don't really care enough to stop. Yeah. So I think that's pretty huge.
That is. Yeah. Yeah. And it probably has a lot. That's big for like how you were saying everything's lifted too. Because there are probably like there's absolutely, I'm sure there's not a handful, a plethora of incidents where like somebody did something once and they got caught and then like their life was ruined because of that. Like that's
On the flip side, though,
Yeah.
I don't know, like the last time that you traveled, but like I do play like softball. I'm like that. I'm like super sober, right? So
Okay.
like I play sober softball.
Great. No,
but-
that's awesome.
but so I was in Vegas playing in a sober softball tour, and as soon as you get off the plane, right, it's just
Mhm.
like weed everywhere.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
just smell weed. I'm like, there's people that had their kids out and stuff like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how is this normal?
I know. It's
Right?
crazy.
It's like, yeah, I'm coming up on 10 years and like blessed, right? But
Awesome.
like,
Yeah.
when did this become a thing? Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whatever. I digress again.
That's
but
so
yeah.
funny. Well, no. So I was saying, so I lived in San Diego,
Mhm.
which is, so I lived in San Diego for from 2018 to 2020. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, years. Who needs them? So I was living in San Diego, and people talked to me about like, oh, well, like, are you smoking weed? So I lived in San Diego when weed became legal in California.
Yeah.
And it's fun because I have thought about so I've like never, so I'm always like, no, like weed isn't for me. And I always get the, oh, well, you're not doing the right kind, or like, you need to do this. And it's like, oh, well, you need this. And I'm like, guys, I lived in California when it was legal. I could go in and just like have a tasting if I wanted. Like, trust me, I very much like, it's not my thing. Like, it's not the kind, no. But I sometimes think about, because California sober is becoming a big thing, I think about if I didn't drink there and I was smoking weed, what my life would turn out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know.
I mean, luckily for me, right?
Yeah.
Like I've stopped really thinking too much into it.
Okay.
Because like, like that's what my time in like rehab really looked like. And I was
Yeah.
like, what if this happened? What if this didn't happen? What if I only did this? What if I
Yeah.
only stayed away from this one?
Mm-hmm.
And every time I would just relapse. You know what I mean? So I would try. Like that's the lie that I
Yeah.
tell myself. It's like I actually would just try. And then eventually I would turn smoking weed into a full-time job.
Yeah.
And then I'd be smoking bowl packs before I even went into work. The next thing you know, I'm like doing other, whatever I want to do. Where I would show up to the neighborhood bar, and like I never went to the neighborhood bar because like I was on drugs since I was young, right? So I was like, okay, let me show all these young, all my friends that I'm okay. So show up with my entire paycheck, buy everybody rounds, be broke, and then I'm like, well, I'm still broke. So what am I doing here? And then it would just like there's story after story after story about relapses like that. Yeah.
100%. And it's funny, like, so I did rehab as well. And I did one of the best things I did, which I completely recommend. And I like just started to talk about this too, but, so there was a grief and loss, like class there. And obviously it was, a lot of people had lost people. And some people who, did get into things. It was around like, a spouse died, a child died, or whoever, somebody around them died. And I didn't have anybody specifically, who I was there for. Even, I had known a few people close to me had died. More than a few people was suicide, which had to do with drugs and alcohol, which is obviously like a whole different topic. But so I went to the grief and loss, and I started to really think about that, like the fact that I needed to grieve and mourn, not so much a person. I needed to mourn the future version of myself that I kept looking at and who I kept wanting to be. So I had this image of myself, like, okay, me, like Cat at 40, and I, have done all this, and I'm doing this, and I'm living here, and, I'm married to this person, like, hanging out with these people. And like that, I needed to more, it's like, it's grieving, and it's like, it's mourning the loss. It's mourning the death of myself. I had to mourn the life that I thought I was going to have had these things not happened, because these things did happen. And for whatever like I could still have those general goals, but I needed to like it was like I had to walk past the caskets of like the cat that I thought I was going to be after every time I like relapsed or messed up. And it was like, this is who I thought I was going to be. Like I needed to put those versions of myself to rest, to really like accept and move on and be okay with the fact that I don't know who the future Cat is going to be. And that's the point, is that we don't know what it's going to be. And the fact that we have a future in general to think about, that's like what recovery is, because you're recovering from these images of ourselves that we think that we can be. But, we lived the life that we lived. And if anything, like that's a beautiful thing, that we have lived the life we lived. and we can like lay to rest and, mourn and grieve and, accept loss, like that radical acceptance. Like I have lost these versions of myself, and that's okay because now I have all of these experiences to become this other version of myself and like grow from that.
Yeah.
It really is like grieving. It's like grieving the death of your future self, like this life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like perfectly said, because I just had somebody on a podcast that it hasn't aired yet. When this comes out, it would have, but
okay, cool.
I mean, at this point, it's not out yet. But it kind of aligns with what you just said, right? Where it's like she didn't have a plan when she got sober.
Yeah.
And her answer to like someone, asking her, right? Like, hey, what's the plan? Like, what are you going to do different? And her response was like, I have no idea. And now it's been umpteenth years later.
Yeah.
And she's like, I still don't have a plan. I do know that these are like some certain things that I need to do on a daily basis to remain sober and remain living like this path of life. But I don't have a plan. I got no clue what's going to happen.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases too, I was like a few months ago, I was talking to one of my friends, and he like he'd went through some things and kept talking about, okay, well, I know I'm going to work on this and this and this. And like in hearing that and talking about that with him, I thought about myself and how like sometimes having a plan can like kind of, I don't want to say mess you up, but it can kind of set you up for the fact that you don't organically grow to who you need to be. It's like that concept of like, don't let perfection get in the way of good. Like if you're someone who like wants something perfect and you want it perfect for so long and you're doing it and it's just like, yeah, but like you could have just like thrown it out to the world when it was good like 2 years ago and it would have also been fine. Like you're kind of like are you, I don't know, like, are you obsessing over that person who's like, oh, like, well, I know that I'm going to be great. And like, I know that I have my tools to do this. And like, I have my tools to do this. And it's kind of like, are you putting the future version of yourself on a pedestal to the point where you are not okay with who you are now? Because who you are now is also valid, especially if you're someone who's thinking about like the tools that you have and what you want to work on. Like those are great things, but not to the point where you're obsessing. Like you shouldn't be idolizing the future version of yourself and obsessing over plans, because sometimes that's the most beautiful and like the whole point of the fact that we're still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about, I mean, it's the same thing. So I've always been told, don't put expectations on people, right? Because I'll always be let down. Same thing about myself, right? Because my history tends to repeat itself.
Yeah.
And my track record shows that like I'm going to let myself down multiple times, right? So it's like I live by a few set principles and I try to live to the best of my ability. But at the end of the day, if my plan doesn't work out, we just call an audible.
Yeah.
Right. And I usually wouldn't say audible, but like Eagles, whatever the case is. But, like that's, it's the truth though, right? You just adjust, right?
Oh, yeah.
Get back up and you do it again.
Yeah.
All right. So what about Cat now? Right. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I'm doing Sober Savage. That's obviously like my main thing. But yeah, I think I've kind of tried to, everything I do, I kind of try to like hone it towards sobriety and stuff. So my passions, I kind of wanted to turn into something that was, for recovery. So of course I, started a charity that was about partying, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like I talked to people and they were like, oh yeah, so like, what is that about? And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I started a charity. And they're just like, oh, like, what's it for? And I'm like, well, it's, someone in recovery, but it's like, it's to promote sober partying. So I want to, team up with like restaurants, venues, hospitality groups. And, I make sure that there are options for people who are in recovery.
Have you noticed?
Party.
I mean, are you laughing because it's been like a tough sell?
No, I'm laughing because it's a crazy sell. And also because it's funny because of all things are like, of course, like you would make a charity that's like to help people party more. Yeah. But that really is the point. Like no, like no party are left behind.
Listen, and I mean, why not? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's communities for almost everything at this point.
Yeah.
But like, there's really not many communities for like the sober people to go out and have a blast.
Yeah. So when I first got sober, I definitely felt this, I went in, I entered recovery and I was sober, and it was very much how, like, I don't want to say it was how I thought and it sucked, but it was like I was sober, so now I couldn't do things.
Yeah.
Which I think, granted, I am not saying that people who are like a couple months sober need to like go out to like the clubs.
We were definitely going to put that disclaimer at the end.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying that at all. I am saying that like the point of it is to show and I guess showcase and glamorize the fact that that is not how it has to be. So I went into recovery and it was like 8 months sober. And I like said no to going to a friend's birthday party because she, worked at a club. She was going to have it there. And everybody there knew I was sober. Like it would have been a big deal for me to go and like pick up a drink. Everybody would have been like, oh my God.
You're like, Cat, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like
just a vodka tonic. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Like, so I said no. And I was like home by myself. And the whole like people, places, and things thing to stay away from. Like I was not around any people. Places, I was home alone. And like the things were me and my mind just sitting there. And it was like I felt this like separation from I wanted to go. And I was talking about how I wanted to go. And I was like really upset. And it was like, okay, but you can't go. Those aren't the place. That's not the place for us. And so I felt like alone, like I couldn't ask anybody to go. And then on the other side, if I had went, it was like, okay, well, we don't have to drink either. And it's like, how are you? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you all right? It's like, I'm going to have a drink. Is that all right? Is that weird? Like, should we put our drinks down because you're in a picture and like people think you're having a drink? Or like I would get a water and I was holding it and then I didn't want to take pictures because I thought that people are going to think I'm drinking. And I was like, why is there this like weird, crazy gap? So, yeah.
So it's, and I don't know why I just had this thought, but I never really thought about it until right now. But I've said it publicly to like a lot of my sober friends, and and a lot of us have agreed, right? So there might be people that watch, and they might be like, "Not me. I would never. I'm not trying to like portray an image." But so listen. So I would always get to this day, a seltzer with a lime. I know I'm not drinking. Everybody around me knows exactly what I'm about. Knows that I'm in recovery. But why do I why do I do that?
And it's funny because
I do drink seltzer all the time. Yeah. But like, that's like what I do. And now if I'm really being transparent and honest, it looks like a vodka tonic.
Okay. So that's hilarious because I'm the opposite. I love seltzer and lime, like on the reg, like me as a person. But when I go out, if I will ask, I'll like give something back or I'll ask for a tall glass with a straw. So it looks different. So it looks different. Okay. Because I'm worried about because of like the social media part and like the whole the fishbowl mindset. Like let's be honest. Like I have a very like people pleasing issues. It's like my top character defect. But so I do the opposite because I don't want people to think I'm drinking. Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I need to switch it up because like I mean it's been like subconscious but conscious at the same time. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. But that's good
but
for
like
you though.
Everybody knows that I'm sober.
Yeah.
But I'm like, can I just get a vodka? Can I just get a seltzer and lime?
That's subconscious. Okay.
Yeah. Can I just get a seltzer and lime? Right. Yeah. I don't know why I do it.
Yeah.
When like I much rather at like a wedding or like a function like that would probably just like a Sprite. Or like a Coke.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't need it in like, and I don't ask for like, hey, can I get it in like a small glass?
Yeah.
But that's what they give it to me in.
Yeah.
And it looks just like it.
And it's funny too, because so funny. I hope people do this too. So when I, was like stalking the podcast and everything. So some of the people have been on here, if you look and when they are holding glasses, it looks like a glass that has alcohol in it. They put right in the captions that it's not.
Really?
Yeah. I saw a bunch of people do that.
Really?
Yeah.
People that I've had on here? Oh, I'm gonna have to.
I was like, I'll name drop it. It was way more fun. Everybody go on.
I'm gonna find them.
Yeah. But also too, like I think that so last year, have to give a shout out to Drew Davis. She has Gem Life Bar. So they're a 0 proof like bar that is so they're around the area. They have like pop-ups and everything like that. So everything they have is 0 proof.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. So we did so Philly Mag let us crash the Whiskey Fest. So I had like a bunch of crew people together and we did the Whiskey Festival sober. And
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing. So places had like, they knew we were coming ahead of time. So they had either like non-alcoholic things for us, or they like made a fun drink. Like a couple places made us like a very, very grandiose. It was like seltzer and juice, but they put it all in and they were like shaking it up and they were like doing this stuff. And we were like, woo, they gave us.
I'm not trying to stand out here, but here we are.
I know. Yeah. But I had a drink and they gave it to me in a glass and I was holding it and I was like, oh no, it looks like I'm drinking. And she was like, so she's like, sober people can have fun glasses. And I was like, oh my God. It was like the most pivotal thing anyone's ever said to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, wow, that's true. Like, why am I so worried about people thinking I'm drinking?
Yeah.
Yeah. But socially, it's probably just as, I think it's weird as a female too to not hold.
Now I'm even thinking more into it because like I'm a weirdo like that.
No,
I think early on why I did it, and I just never really thought of it past because I never thought I was actually going to stay sober, but I did, was like I never even wanted people to come up and ask if I was or wasn't drinking.
Okay.
So if I like made it look like I was, they would just assume that I was and not treat me any different.
Okay.
So that's actually why and it just stuck and I continued to do it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's worked.
Yeah.
But,
that's a lot. That's a lot to unpack too, because it's interesting that you thought that you were never going to stay sober, so you never wanted to make that.
So my track record said that I was never gonna. So I wish that I had that story that I went to rehab once or even twice. Yeah. 3 times would have been a really cool story, but I went like a lot of times. To the point where like I had to end up going to a recovery house twice.
Okay.
And it was, divine intervention, moment of clarity, whatever you want to call it. But I got linked up with like some really good guys in the Bucks County area.
Amazing.
And it like saved my life. But yeah, I went to treatment a lot. So yeah, my history was going to be like, at some point you're going to relapse again.
Okay.
Right?
Do you think that helped or hurt you? I'm getting all like
no, that's fine. I think it honestly, I think it helped, because now I actually at that point really started to believe like what I was to my core.
Okay.
And I knew that like if I wasn't constantly working on myself, eventually I'm going to continue to do what has gotten me up until at that point a recovery house. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, like let's actually do some true work on ourselves.
Yeah. There is like that gift of desperation, like that when you, it's like that hopelessness where you're just like, I don't think I can do this. And it's that could, like, that's typically not a good thing, but it's so weird. But like, I think with recovery, it really is, it really does help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like the whole like shame versus guilt. Like if you feel shamed, you think like guilt is saying like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And shame is saying like, oh my God, I can't believe that that's who I am. And that's like, those are two very, very different things. And I don't think that shame helps people change shame isn't a catalyst for change. Guilt is, because guilt is like thinking like, oh, I did this wrong thing. So this is the action I did and I want to change. Shame is saying I am this person. So like, like it's not, doesn't really motivate you to change. But for some reason, it like in recovery, like it takes a lot to believe that you actually are that person.
I mean, and luckily like today I'm able to like laugh hard about like what my truth is. You have to laugh. But for a long time, it was like my biggest, it was like my darkest thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, like I'm in treatment for the whatever number time.
Yeah.
This is it. Like I'm going to go back to a recovery house. I'm 23 years old, living on a top bunk. This is what my life will ever be.
Yeah.
And now I joke with like all my boys, like, yeah, no, I used to like borrow kids' clothes at the recovery house because I liked their clothes. It's not like I didn't have clothes. It was just like, that's like what I was doing. I was turning my home group of AA into I thought I had to impress people. Right?
Yeah.
All right. So enough about that.
Yeah. But it's sorry, I don't want to like dwell
on
it.
You're good.
Yeah. But it's funny because so I did the opposite where I didn't want people to think I was drinking because I got sober and a lot of my life had been performance so I did Eagles. But I majored in dance. So like that, like I had a performative like background.
Yeah.
I was married into a political family. Like, so it was like that, like appearance kind of thing. Yeah. I had a job, which I absolutely loved, but it was marketing. Like I was in that mindset. So, I was like, NFL cheerleader, like beauty queen, and then like, wife person. And then I, left. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to be like desert party girl. And then it was like, okay, now I'm going to be, I'm going to be like, so like completely reformed, sober Cat. And like, I was like, I don't know what I was like going to be valedictorian of AA. Like I was like in and I was like, all right, people talk about like, oh, like meeting makers make it. Like
smartest person on the short bus.
Yeah. Oh my, yeah. It was like meeting makers make it. I went to all the meetings. I was like chairing, like 3 months in, I was like counting down the days. I was like so ready. I was like going, I was going to win sobriety.
You were going to win AA.
I was going to win AA. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But all that was another, but that's not what, and like, I'm saying AA, whatever program, like that's not, recovery is not performance based. Like, so I went in and I was worried people thought I was drinking, but it's because I was in that mindset of like needing to accomplish it. So I went real public with getting sober really quick.
Which probably helped you a ton.
Yeah, but I think it put that, like, that's my character defect is people pleasing. So when I started
that's a really good point. Yep.
It was like, so like people talk about, you know, the worst moments of like the relapses and, you know, you end up like, you know, get a DUI or end up in the hospital. And like the scariest shit I went through, like after entering recovery and like relapsing was when it wasn't bad and when nobody knew I drank. That was scary because then it was like in the back of my head because it was like, oh, well, you can do this and nobody has to know.
Yeah.
Because I deserve it because look how good I am at being sober. I deserve to drink.
It's such a dark place.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
So I think I already know.
Okay.
But we have to have you answer it, right?
Yes.
We heard about Sober, Savage Squad.
Okay, yeah.
You know, everything that is consistent of that.
Uh-huh.
What's your purpose? What's the purpose look like for you in the next couple of years?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I don't know how I didn't think about that.
You didn't do too much research. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I know everybody else's, but mine, honestly, my purpose is to make recovery funny because, and I know that sounds like really, really weird. But it really, like, if you think about it, you're taking like the people who party so hard that we did it too much and we have to stop. Like that's kind of like really funny. And like, yeah, like
it is.
I don't know
the people that are in it are not going to find it funny. But yes, like, and that's kind of,
and maybe not even
gift,
funny, but
right?
like fun. Like it really is fun. Like, first of all, like the whole, you know, like being a savage thing. First of all, like people who are like getting, you know, down and dirty and partying. I party my hardest right now and I'm sober and I'm pretty sure that like the other people dancing on top of the bar, like I'm a lot more savage because I am sober and doing it. And I think that's saying something. Also, like, you know, the whole like you're not laughing, you're crying. It really is like, it's really, if you think about it, like it really is funny that, you know, we're here and somehow we survived. Like the shit we went through, the war stories, like some of like that stuff is intense, but it's also like we made it. We're on the other side. Like recovery is supposed to be fun. Like we made it on the other side of caring about life, like at its core. Like and it's not even us as people. Like our souls cared about living and staying alive, even when we didn't. Like our personalities didn't. And somehow, like my soul was like, okay, like girl, it's not ready to go yet. Like just get up. And I was, and the personality of me, I was like, no, I want to stay asleep. And it's just like, no, girl, like get the hell up. Like somehow I'm still here. And that's kind of awesome. And like, it should be fun. Like we're on the other side where we don't have to worry about any of that shit anymore, but we can still do all of the same things.
Remember the first time you actually had like the first genuine laugh when you were in recovery?
Yes.
And you're like, why the fuck can't I stop laughing?
Oh my God, yes.
I remember that. It was in treatment. It wasn't even funny, but it was something like, I had no idea. Okay. No, but I do remember that. Like I couldn't stop laughing. And that was like one of the first times in like a really long time that I was like, I might be okay. I might be able to get out of this. Yeah. I relapsed after, but like, you know, like I was like, I can experience this sober.
Yeah, it really is. It's an amazing feeling. It's awesome. Yeah. I remember my first life too. I was in those like green paper pants that they like scrubs they put you in. Yeah. Well, they're paper. So of course I sit down and I'm me. So I'm always like, you know, so I sit down and I'm like, oh, I believe I'm here. Like, all right. So I go like this and I rip my, so then I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So I'm like, hi. Because of course I'm still smiling, acting like everything's fine. I'm like, hi, I'm so sorry to bother you. Can I have another pair of pants? Because I ripped mine. Everybody's laughing. So I like shimmy in the back. Already I know like 4 of the people's names because I was going to win sobriety. Yep. Give me same pair of pants. Coming back, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I sit down, did the same fucking thing.
You didn't get another pair?
They did give me another because
I would have just packed it up and I probably would have just went to my room. I'm like, that's it for the day.
Because I was sitting and they had my clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like, yeah. So I was like, I can't. I'm just walking. I'm like, ripped my goddamn pants, and I'm sit down and I'm like, it's like, oh my god, what the fuck is wrong with me? It's so bad. Yeah. But yeah. So the last year and a half, I've been doing. So I do stand up. I've been doing it at.
Oh my god, we didn't even talk about it.
We didn't. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of comedians are sober.
I can believe that.
A lot. Because if you're a comedian, it's like automatically you have to have that like little bit about yourself that like hates yourself enough to make fun of yourself. So yeah. So most of us are sober. But so I started in I did it before, but I started in rehab.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like a couple people like thought it was funny because I'm like always talking. But yeah, so then it started, and that is the joy that keeps me going. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Have you done shows like in Philly?
No, not in Philly. I did a few in rehabs around Philadelphia. So yeah, so I do them. So I've done them with people in rehabs. I've done them publicly as well for like fundraisers. So then
I was about to make a sick joke, but you'll laugh at it. I was going to say, were you just in a patient or?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. But the first time I did it in rehab, I was a patient.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, but the other ones you weren't.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah. No, I was a patient every time. That's actually why I keep going back to rehab. So it's like my goal. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. So before we shut it down.
Yeah. It's a good lie. I should like stock that.
Yeah. Do you have a comedy page?
I do. It is not, a lot of it is not public because of the fact that it's in rehab. So a lot of it is anonymity and whatnot, patient stuff.
Confidentiality. Yeah.
Yes. And a few of them are for certain organizations. Like there is one in September I did in New York, and I'll be doing it again. Woo. It's because September is Suicide Awareness Month.
Yeah.
And the content is it's just,
could be dark.
Yeah, it's a little dark. Yeah. So, there's things that you can joke about publicly, and then there's things that, because there's a line. So, joking about, suicide, I wouldn't ever want to do that just like out in the open, because for some people that can be a trigger.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But no, we definitely appreciate you coming out.
Thanks so much. This was so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, I forgot to do the whole podcast thing. If you like what we said, right? We're on Instagram, Pain W Purpose, YouTube, Pain with a Purpose Podcast, and Apple and Spotify, Pain with a Purpose Podcast. Like, comment, share. We definitely appreciate the support. Definitely keeps us going. And with that, we will shut it down, and we'll see you next week. Thank you again.
Yay, thanks.